Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn about testing big data and Hadoop, a very exciting and important topic in your 2014 Big Data Strategy. My name is Laura Poggi, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at RTTS. I'll be moderating the webinar today. Bill Hadoop, the President and CEO of RTTS, will be presenting, followed by Jeff Baccarsley, RTTS Vice President and Chief Architect, who will be providing a quick product demonstration and answering your questions at the conclusion of the webinar. As for any questions that may pop up during the webinar, we will be accepting them over chat and providing answers at the end of the session, so please feel free to send them in at any point throughout the presentation and demo. Also, if there are any issues seeing the presentation or hearing the presenters, please use chat to alert the host. Thank you again for your time and participation, and now I'll hand it over to Bill to begin the presentation.
Great, thanks, Laura. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It seems like we have people from all over the world on this call, which is pretty cool. So welcome. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about big data and Hadoop and about testing them. We're going to talk a little bit about data warehouse, a little refresher on it for those that aren't exactly familiar with data warehouses. We're going to look at a data warehouse and Hadoop use case for a typical installation, and then how to test big data, and then Jeff Baccarsley is going to do a demo of QuerySurge and Hadoop. All right, just a little intro about RTTS. We are the leading provider of software quality for critical business apps. We've been around since 1996. Our primary focus is on consulting services and then software around QA. We're located, our headquarters is in New York. That's where we are right now in this frigid winter with 15-degree temperatures. We also have offices in Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Phoenix. Our consulting geographic region, North America, where we deal with mostly the Fortune 1000. We have about 600 clients that we've dealt with over the years. And then our software is QuerySurge, which has made its way around the world, which is pretty cool. We're partners with IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, HP, and Teradata, and we just joined a partnership with Hortonworks, who's one of the leading providers of Hadoop. Okay, so let's look at some of the quotes that are out there about big data. One of the interesting things I found on TechCrunch said that Facebook handles 300 million photos a day and about 105 terabytes of data every 30 minutes. Wow. Another one from IDC said that the big data market's going to grow from what was $3.2 billion in 2010 to $32 billion in 2017, which is a ridiculous amount of growth. And then Gartner said that 65% of advanced analytics will have Hadoop embedded in them by 2015. So the Hadoop and big data market's growing exponentially. A little bit about big data, and I pulled this from Wikipedia. Big data is defined as too much volume, velocity, and variety to work on normal database architectures, and by volume they mean the amount of data, by velocity, the speed of data in and out, and by variety, the range of data types and sources. And big data is defined as 5 petabytes or more of data, which is a gigantic amount of data. So what's Hadoop? Well, Hadoop is obviously one of the biggest buzzwords of software out there. It's an Apache open source project where they're developing software for distributed computing. Hadoop is a framework for distributed processing of large data sets. It's also easily deals with the 3 Bs, which we just discussed. It scales up into clusters from one desktop or server to thousands of machines. And it can automatically handle failures at the application layer. So the key attributes of Hadoop are it's redundant and reliable, it's extremely powerful, it's easy to program distributed apps in it, and it runs on commodity hardware. So any kind of cheap hardware will run on. Basic Hadoop architecture, and I'm going to talk about real basic, is one is MapReduce, which is the processing part of Hadoop, which manages all the programming jobs. It's also known as the task tracker, and the Hadoop distributed file system, which stores all the data on the machines, and also known as the data node. So here I've depicted a cluster of machines where, as we said before, you can scale from 1 to 100 to 1,000 machines, and I've recently read about one cluster that's 4,500 machines. So the drop The job tracker is a piece of the software that interfaces with the task tracker and accepts the jobs, assigns tasks, and identifies any failed machines. And then there's the name node, which interfaces with the data node and coordinates the data, does inserts and extraction through the name nodes. And then another part of the software is called Apache Hive. Hive is an infrastructure built on top of Hadoop that provides a SQL-like language called HiveQL that interfaces with the HDFS files. This is where QuerySurge, our software, interfaces with Hadoop. So a quick review of the data warehouse software and data warehouse implementation. One is the data warehouse is typically a relational database. It stores historical data and contains either raw or formatted data from multiple sources. The ETL process, ETL standing for extract, transform, and load, is needed to pull data from sources, reformat it, transform, and load it into data warehouses. So extract is extracting data from one or more online transaction processing systems and then copy it into the warehouse. Transforming removes inconsistencies, summarizes fields, adds fields, concatenates fields, does all kinds of things to the data to put it in a common source in the data warehouse, and then it loads it into the data warehouse. So the ETL process typically looks like this. It pulls data from source databases, files, XML, web logs, social media, extracts, transforms, and loads it into the data warehouse. So we're going to look at a data warehouse and Hadoop use case, one of the three use cases for Hadoop, one of the three most common. In this use case, you use Hadoop as a landing zone for big data and raw data. So the process is you bring all the raw data and the big data into Hadoop, you perform some pre-processing of the data, you determine which data goes into the data warehouse, and then you do the ETL process, bringing over the pertinent data into the data warehouse. So the use case data flow looks like this, pulling data from the source. As you can see, my little fireman with the fire hose, because it's mass volumes of data as we discussed before, into Hadoop. Then the ETL process pulls it into the data warehouse. Let's look at testing of big data. Typically, the recommended functional test strategy is to test at every entry point in the system, and this will allow you for rapid localization of any problems in between any two data points. We're going to focus on just two data points right now for our demo and for our talk here, and they are one test entry point, which is the source being Hadoop, and the target being our data warehouse. And there's three big issues currently out in the marketplace with testing big data that we've come across. One is the need to verify more data faster. The second is automate this process because it's just too labor intensive. And the third is being able to test across different platforms, whether it be flat files or XML or web logs or social media or Hadoop and your typical data warehouse from your major vendors. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about QuerySurge, which is RDTS's testing tool. QuerySurge is a test tool built to automate data warehouse testing and the ETL testing process. QuerySurge is what it does is it finds bad data in your big data. Most firms, based on our experience over the last few years, test way less than 1% of their data. Some even 0.1% of their data because they're doing it manually. So business intelligence apps and analytics apps sit on top of data warehouse, and what you have underneath that is data that's been untested. Now your C-level executives and other executives are relying on this intelligence to make strategic decisions for the corporation. That's a little scary. So bad data will cause execs to make decisions that will cost them millions of dollars. According to Gartner, as much as the average company loses $8 million because of bad data, and some lose as much as $120 million because of it. And QuerySurge can test up to 100% of your data quickly and find bad data. QuerySurge does provide testing for multiple different roles and uses. Specifically, we found that testers, ETL developers, data analysts, and operations teams have been using the software. Our architecture is a Web 2.0 interface. It has a backend database, an Apache Tomcat server, and then it has agents that communicate with the source files, databases, and whatever else have you, and the target data warehouse. So what they do is they pull data from the source and the targets, and they do rapidly compare it and find your differences. It pretty much works with any major browser and on either Windows or Linux platforms. And as far as the sources and the targets, as I said, all your major vendors, XML, flat files, Hadoop, you name it. Anything that can be connected to by a JDBC driver. QuerySurge has 4 basic modules. The first being a design library, where you create pairs of queries that we call query pairs, one aimed at the source and one aimed at the target. And then the scheduling module, where you build groups of query pairs, and then you can run tests that can either kick off now, every Wednesday at 8 o'clock if you want, or automatically after the ETL process completes, however you like it. Then we have a runtime dashboard where you can view your real-time execution of these queries, and you can analyze results as they're happening. And then we have a reporting module where you can examine reports, analyze, and automatically have emails sent to everybody on the team. It's great for distributed teams that are testing all over the world. So QuerySurge can verify more data. Data can test up to 100% of the data, and it does it quickly. It can automate everything from the kickoff of the test after the ETL process ends to the execution, to the comparison, to emailing the results out to everyone. It can test across many different platforms, from databases to data warehouse to data marts, flat files, XML, Hadoop, you name it. And we've seen that it could speed up testing up to 1,000 times faster than manual testing. So the value add for QuerySurge is it can increase data coverage from less than 1% to somewhere upwards to 100%, depending on how much you want to test. It can reduce testing time dramatically by as much as 1,000 times, or some combination of increased test coverage while decreasing testing time. So the ROI on this, depending on how you're using it, can help you redeploy headcount. We see this a lot. You have 10 testers and you want to take them and put, 6 of the people doing something else while the other 4 people do testing with QuerySurge, or 8 and 2, or however you want to redeploy them. It helps with that. It provides savings over manual testing just because you can do it much quicker. And it provides an increase in better data, which could help you save lots of money by helping your C-level people make good decisions based on good data. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing with big data and Hadoop in a nutshell. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Picarsley, our chief architect, who's going to give you a little demo of QuerySurge and how QuerySurge can interface with Hadoop. Jeff?
Thanks, Bill, and good day to everybody. I'm just going to give me 1/2 second to move over to QuerySurge, and here we are. Let's start talking a little bit about QuerySurge. As Bill mentioned, QuerySurge is a tool that is designed to test data flows in data warehouse architectures and in between data warehouse architectures and their sources. And as Hadoop is becoming one of the big sources for data warehouse implementations, we are seeing its use much more, and we're interested in supporting with QuerySurge the implementation of Hadoop plus data warehouse kinds of deployments in the industry. So what I want to jump in and talk about first off is simply the place where testing is going to start out. We're working with the use case that Bill mentioned before, where we've got a Hadoop cluster on one side, and that'll be our source, and on the other side we've got some data that is pulled out of Hadoop, perhaps in summary format, and put in data warehouse for use by the wider organizational community in making decisions. Now, what you see on the left here is what we call a source query. On the right, a target query. The two of these together make a query pair, and the query pair is to test between these two sources. So each side will bring back data that will be compared by QuerySurge and the results will be preserved and presented for your use in the QA cycle. On the left side, the source side, you can see that we've got some HiveQL there that's set up to pull out some data that might not be so clean from Hadoop. And on the right, we've got the fully processed data coming back, in this case, from Oracle. So we have just a real simple query to pull that back. We're going to test one against the other to make sure that what actually got into Oracle really relates correctly to what actually exists in Hadoop. Now, before we go on and do this test, I just want to point out that, as Bill said, we do want to support pretty much everything that's out there on the market. So Oracle is what we're using today, but we do really have a lot of good support across a whole range of technologies. So if you want to do Hadoop to Oracle, that's what we're demonstrating, but you can see we also support SQL Server, so the Microsoft technologies. We support Teradata as well as Asper products from Teradata. So we've got those in hand. From IBM, we've got DB2 as well as Netezza. And in addition to that, we've got Sybase covered as well. That's from the database perspective. We also cover flat files, Excel, and Access. So a good range of technologies that you can test between whether Hadoop is on the source side, the target side, or whichever. Now, what I'm going to do is show you one of the features of our design area, and that's the design time run. The idea of the design time run is simply that you want to, once you get your queries built, see that they work properly in QuerySurge. And the proper work, so to speak, is not so much necessarily for testing. It's just really to get your tests set up, know what they're going to bring back, and get them ready for full throttle execution once we get to the scheduling area of QuerySurge. Now, having said that, we do have a number of users who have started using pretty much and living in pretty much this design area and use it for developer unit testing. So the tool can be used in a lot of different kind of deployments depending on what your needs are. Now, while this is executing and then MapReduce jobs are now being generated on our Hadoop cluster and being executed, I just wanted to jump in and show you another feature of our design area. And if you look at the source query here, this HiveQL, you'll see it's pretty standard QL, but there's something in the middle there, this unusual sort of notation that you may not be familiar with. And that what that is what we call in the world of QuerySurge a reusable query snippet. And the idea of this snippet is that if we're going to have to use or reuse the same bit of SQL in a lot of different queries, we'd rather put it in a reusable snippet so that we can kind of make it into a library and use it as a library. And then if we need to edit it, we need to add to it, if we need to modify it, we can change it in one location and it's fixed everywhere it's used. So in this particular case, we've got a problem to solve, which is that our Hive implementation has a bunch of dates in it, or I should say our Hadoop data has a bunch of dates in it. And those dates appear in a variety of different ways, usually as numeric dates in the raw data. But on the Oracle side, on the database side, they appear as month codes. And normally, if this was perhaps a database on the source side, we might have a lookup table or something like that that we could convert with. But of course, this is Hadoop, and we don't have a lookup table. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the snippet feature of QuerySurge to do our lookups, and that's exactly what this snippet does. So we can embed this lookup snippet that'll do the conversion of our months to the corresponding letter codes, and we can use it in as many queries as we should like to use it, and we're good to go. So that's one very helpful feature that QuerySurge brings to the table for dealing with the kinds of data problems that you will encounter with Hadoop. Now, I'll just mention there's a full set of tools that go along with our snippets. So not only can you view the original snippet from any location where it's embedded in a query, but you can also do a thing called unlink. And what unlink means is I'm going to take the contents of the snippet and I'm going to plop it into this query, put it into the query, and break the connection between the snippet and the query. And the use case for that would be that you're going to use the snippet and you need to modify it just for this one location, for this one particular test. So you don't want to modify it everywhere. You just need to make some special customization for this test, and so you can unlink it and go forward with that. So let's go back in and see where we are. Our query is still running. It just completed. There we go. So what you can see here is that we got our data back. In this case, things passed. We can go in and look at the raw data. We can see our source data coming back from Hadoop. You can see the query. If you want to eyeball the query and the data at the same time, you can do that. We've got the target data as well as the target query, same thing. You can go look at the data and the query at the same time in order to kind of check out whether the data looks the way you think it should based on the query that you wrote. So what we have here now is a set of Oracle queries and Hadoop queries that go together that test out the data flow from Hadoop to Oracle, the Oracle Data Warehouse. What I want to do now is move over to our scheduling area and talk about how do you schedule tests. So there are a number of ways to schedule tests in QuerySurge. There's a very quick way, which is just to right-click on a group of tests, which I'll describe in a moment, and say run now, and this is just going to run this particular suite. I should tell you what a suite is, and a suite is exactly what it sounds like. It's a set of tests that are going to be executed together. So creating a suite is just as easy as that, and if you look at the right, you can see our query pair library. So we can drop a folder of query pairs in, we can edit query pairs out in order to craft the exact mix of query pairs that we want. We can add query pairs in individually, and once we get the set that we're interested in, we save it, and we've got a new suite that we're ready to run. Now, as I mentioned, we can right-click on the suite and run now, but there are obviously many other kinds of use cases for execution that we need to support, and so what I want to do is talk about those now. And the first of them is going to be what we call our schedule scenario. So you can create a scenario. Scenario is an executable group of suites, so you can add as many suites as you want to a scenario. And what we can do is put in as many different kinds of tests from those suites as we should like to. Once we've got the mix of suites that we want in our scenario, we can actually schedule. So time-based scheduling is all done from the scenario scheduler. So, for example, if we want to execute this suite, say perhaps in the mid-evening tonight, and we want to execute this suite perhaps a little bit later, we can set that up. And if we want to execute the next suite in the wee hours of the morning, we can do that as well. So once we've got our suite set up and our schedule set up, we can push them off and let them ride. Now, there is another option as well, because this is all time-based scheduling, and many of our users use time-based scheduling for some of their needs, but they've got other needs as well. So let me talk about other scheduling kinds of needs. And those other needs are what we think of as event-based scheduling, meaning QuerySurge needs to run in response to some external event in the environment. And there are a couple of different sorts of deployments that are commonly used with QuerySurge that are event-based. One would be simply running something based on an external clock, so to speak, where you, for example, might want to set up a job on either a Windows box using the Windows scheduler or on a Linux box using the cron-tab facility to kick off daily sets of QuerySurge executions based on time to check out what your data flows look like and to make sure everything looks good. So there's that need out there. Another need out there is to kind of link your QuerySurge executions to your ETL runs as you're pushing data through your system while you're developing your ETL code. And for both of these needs, what we developed is what we call the QuerySurge Execution API. It's a command line API that you can deploy anywhere in your environment and use it in order to call into QuerySurge and execute QuerySurge tests based on events according to your broader environment. So what I'd like to do is just launch a demo of that right now, and you in order to do that, I'm going to need to get back here. What I've done is I've kicked off an ETL run, and let me make sure that you can see see if I can show that window. Oh, I guess not. All right. Well, in any event, what is occurring is this is a bit of a small ETL run, and the ETL is just going to do two legs, and at the end of each run, what's going to occur is it's going to call into the QuerySurge execution API, and we're going to see a QuerySurge execution appear. And if you look in the upper left corner of the browser, you'll be able to see that once the execution ends, you'll be able to see that there's a QuerySurge execution taking place, and that execution will pop up, and we'll be able to see its results once it comes in. While we're waiting for that to happen, what I'd like to do is just pop over and show you our real-time execution view. And what this view does is it gives you a picture of what is going on in your QuerySurge during execution. So while things are happening, you'll be able to see them. You'll be able to see the data come into QuerySurge, and you'll be able to examine exactly what's going on. As data flows in, you'll be able to look at the different query pairs that you have asked for queued up for execution. You'll be able to look at the actual data, so you can see the data that has come back into QuerySurge, and you'll be able to see, again, the source and the target and so forth. If you want to share this data out with coworkers, you can export to Excel or CSV or an XML format. So if you need to either share it out, or if you want to work it up in a different system, you can get it out of QuerySurge that way. And here we go. We've got one of our runs executing now. As you saw before, it comes through. We can look at the data that has come into QuerySurge, and you can look at your failures. What we're looking at now is a stacked view of failures, where QuerySurge has flagged these rows out of the rows that came back as data failure rows, meaning data disagreed between those two rows. We've got a row from the source and a row from the target stacked on one another. That's what we call this stack view. We've also got a side-by-side view. So if you want to look at the source on the left, target on the right, and compare the data that way, you can do that as well. So all of that's available to you for looking at your data in real time as it comes back into QuerySurge. Let me just spend a minute talking about the different kinds of issues that QuerySurge will trap. So one of the things that QuerySurge looks at, of course, are the data failures, and as you just saw, any of those that are trapped by QuerySurge will be flagged. The row will be flagged with a red data failure flag. In addition to that, the actual data disagreement will be highlighted for you. Now, there are other kinds of issues that QuerySurge is alert to. One of them is what happens when you get different numbers of rows coming back from your source and your target. So in this case, that's exactly what happened. We got 4 more rows, row count equals 4 coming back on the target side, and QuerySurge flagged those rows as non-matching rows, meaning it looked for a key value on the source side that it found in the target and couldn't find any matching key, so it flagged these rows as non-matching rows. So differences in row counts are also important, coming back from source to target are also important for QuerySurge, in addition to data mismatches. There's another issue that QuerySurge is alert to, and in this case you can see that we got data back from both source and target, and the same number of rows. If you look in the upper right, you can see that 665 rows came back from each. But we do have an error, and the error is based not on data per se, but on data type. So QuerySurge is telling us that it's type alert, And the source column for the ship date column, if we look back on the source, you can see that's the rightmost column. When it compared to the rightmost column called delivery date on the target, saw that there was a data difference, meaning a data type difference, a timestamp on the source and a varchar on the target. So QuerySurge called that data type difference to our attention right here. So that's another kind of issue that QuerySurge is alert to. The last thing I'll just mention is that QuerySurge also tracks any exceptions that might occur during execution. So if there is any kind of SQL exception that is thrown, QuerySurge will attempt to let you know about it so that you can track it down and figure out why it might have happened. All right, so that's all about data testing in volume, which is the name of the game for QuerySurge, with data flowing from, in the main focus of today's talk, Hadoop into a data warehouse architecture. So what we've got here is one standard way that you might elect to set up your tests, which is to segment your tests out by date, so that you can bring a chunk of Hadoop data and look at it by date and check the analogous data that has been moved into your data warehouse and look at those values. In our case here, it's very easy to figure out where our problems are, because in our first 4 months that we've tested, everything looks good. All the data is coming back exactly as we would like. And when we get to the 5th month, October, now we've got a problem. So we've got some failures here. We've got some excess rows coming back on one side versus the other. We've got some data mismatches. And so we know that immediately that we've got to look at our October data when we evaluate the ETL from Hadoop into the data warehouse, so that we can figure out where our problems are. The last thing I'll just mention is that we've also got these other key tests where we look at these user totals by month. Again, this was where we have this embedded snippet, so we can see the snippet did exactly what we wanted. We were able to compare the data. It looks, the data is translated in the source to these 3-letter codes, and the target that exists as these 3-letter codes. And we're able to pull out some data that has the same key, but incorrect months or a different month at least. And we'll have to see if that also resolves down to a defect in the ETL process. So all of these different kinds of tests, pushing data from your Hadoop system into your data warehouse, making sure that the processes that bring data through are behaving in the way you expect, all of those are a huge plus, and the critical thing here is the ability to do this in bulk, do bulk data testing with QuerySurge, because otherwise your sampling size is just way too small in our experience of data, and you just don't get the picture of what's really going on in the data without the bulk data test. The sample size is the critical thing here. Let me just mention one last aspect of this within QuerySurge. As you can see, we've got all of the tests on the left side here that we've run. So if we wanted to go and look at some old data, we could certainly do that if we ran the data, this test today, and looked at the data, and it kind of occurs to us that maybe when we ran that the last time it didn't exactly look the same way, so we want to go and check it out. We've got all of our old data in QuerySurge as well, so we can look at all of our old tests and kind of see if history supports what we're seeing today with the application or with the ETL. So let's now move on and talk a little bit about the last part of the QuerySurge workflow, and that's recording. And what we're going to do is just run some of the basic reports that we've got with in QuerySurge. And the first one I'd like to start out with is what we call our scenario summary report. We're just going to look at a scenario that we ran this morning. And when we look at this scenario, we can see a real good kind of bird's eye view of what occurred during the test. If you look at the test results portion of the summary, you can see something that's pretty clear. We ran a total of 20 query pairs, 13 of them passed. And we had a pass rate of about 65%. And that pass rate, of course, is not terribly impressive when we consider all of the data that might be flowing through during the course of the test. But that's not the full story to what the test is telling us. And We want to be alert to that, so we give you this overview set of metrics that we've got in the next section of the report, and they tell a slightly different story. First of all, they tell us that we were able to run this test in about 4.5 minutes. More importantly, they tell us that we were able to do in that time period about 6.7 million verifications. And if you think about each of your result sets coming back as a table, and you've got a target result set and a source result set coming back for every query pair, and if you think about comparing cell 1-1 of your source results to cell 1-1 of your target, cell 1-2 of source, cell 1 to the target, and so forth, and you count all those comparisons up, well, that gives you your total number of verifications. And we want to track that and give that to you so you know exactly how much data you're comparing. Now, we've got, in this run, as we said, about 6.7 million verifications, about 277,000 failures amongst those. And if you work that out to the reliability, meaning how much data came back correctly, it turns out to be about 96%. So 96% in this run came back with favorable comparison. That's vastly different from the 65% pass rate. It's telling us that the failures in the query pairs were spread over a larger number of query pairs instead of being concentrated in a smaller number of query pairs. So the pass rate and the reliability really give us good insight into what occurred during this execution. So getting a good, from a metrics perspective, getting a good insight into each of your runs is really what we're about in terms of reporting. I'd like to move on and look at a related report to this one. It starts out the same way. It's what we call our scenario detail report. And the scenario detail report, as I said, has the same summary at the top, but it continues on with all of the detailed results for each query pair that was part of this execution. So you can see all of the results that came back, pass, fail, outcomes, and in addition to that, you can see a number of important metrics that are at the query pair level. So you can see row counts, whether the row count differences, failed rows, etc. So it's very easy to start to spot why things might have failed. You can see we've got 7 failed rows here that caused the failure on this query pair. We got an error on number 26. It looks like there are no rows that came back on the source side, so we need to check that out, and so on and so forth. So this is an excellent report for starting to investigate your results and kind of get a bird's eye view of not only the overall occurrences that happened during the execution, but also the details of what happened. In addition to that, we do have a lot of users, I should mention as sort of an aside, who have audit needs on their testing, and they're either organizational audits or external organizations may audit their testing. So this kind of report is a great kind of report to export and have available cached for an organizational audit. Since we're talking about reporting, I just want to mention one other aspect of QuerySurge, and that is that we do support, as Bill mentioned in the slide presentation, we do support email reporting. So you can set up email messaging to folks in your organization. The email is completely customizable, so we've chosen a particular set of texts and values here, but you can create whatever you like in terms of messaging. You can send out the emails or have them sent out based on any number of criteria, whether your test passed, whether they failed, whether there was some other aspect to the test that is noteworthy. And as you can see here, the emails go out. You can kind of create any kind of HTML-based message that you want. In this case, we've got a slew of different metrics that are associated with this run in a table. So whatever you need in terms of keeping the organization informed as to outcomes of executions or about starts of executions, whatever you might want to inform people about, you can do that with the notification facility within QuerySurge. So that's another important aspect of the reporting within QuerySurge, and so you can keep everybody informed either at by the formal reporting level or by the emails. What I'd like to do now is just look at a couple of final reports, and then we'll throw the session open for questions that you might have. One of the things I'd like to point out is that we do give reporting that's highly customizable, and what it allows you to do is look at all of the last run results of all your query pairs. So if you need to kind of just scope through all the most immediate runs, you can do that with the report. And again, there's a whole slew of different filters here. So if you need to filter out and just get data that's associated with either specific users or by dates or by names of suites and scenarios, etc., all of that kind of filtering is available to you. The last report I'm going to mention is our scenario comparison report. So if you want to compare results of scenarios, you can do that and see what the outcomes of all your scenarios were. So all of those different options are available for you. We focused in our examination of reporting here on reports that are results-oriented, but I just want to mention very quickly that we have a slew of reports around other aspects of the information that's in QuerySurge. So if you want to report on your queries, you can do that. Look at query history. You want to look at your suite history, you can do that, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, reporting for administrative users about users and connections and so on and so forth is available as well. So I think that's pretty much the full tour of QuerySurge. What I'd like to do is pop back now to our moderator and see if there are any questions that have come in that people are interested in hearing more about.
All right. Well, yes, thanks, Jeff. We are opening up the floor for your questions. So we've definitely got a lot of questions already. If you have questions that you didn't ask, feel free to type them into the chat window, and we'll see if we can get to them during this session. The first question that we have is, how do you test XML, and can you please explain?
That's a question that a lot of our users actually are interested in. There's a lot of XML sources out there. And the short answer is that there are JDBC compliant XML drivers out there that you can use with QuerySurge. So it's really not a whole lot different than setting up any kind of data source through JDBC. And those drivers are commercially available. We just like any commercially available JDBC driver, we can support it. And the testing then pretty much follows the same pattern that you saw here.
Alrighty. The next question is, who wrote the SQL that was being shown in the query pair view? Was it created by QuerySurge?
I wish that we could create magic like that, but our experience is that your business rules, your mappings are way too complicated for an auto generation of any kind of testing SQL off of documentation or elsewhere. So those SQLs are written by a tester who's obviously got both SQL and HQL experience based on the mapping documentation. And let me just mention a couple of points about that. One is that does represent sort of a philosophic stance of our organization about what good testing really entails. Your best way to test, your only guarantee, in truth, of deploying good code to your environment is if you've got a skilled set of QA workers who are going to sit alongside your ETL developers and are going to evaluate the same mapping documents and come up with tests on their own that are going to test out the different mappings. So given that that's really the case, we want to give you the tools to write those SQLs and to get the best kind of testing in place that you possibly can. Now, having said that as well, as you can see just illustrated here, a lot of the SQL, based on our experience, that you need to write is pretty straightforward. So if you just consider our data warehouse SQL here, it's really a very simple SQL. And I would say, based on what our test developers tell me, probably 60 to 70% of the mappings are pretty straightforward and don't require SQL that's a whole lot more complicated than that. And apropos of that, what I'll mention is that we do have in QuerySurge a data wizard, and the purpose of the data wizard really is to enable testing between, say, different databases that are part of, say, a database upgrade or data migration, whatever it might happen to be. So we give you the easy ability to either generate row count or full data tests, select star type tests, so that when you're interested in supporting that kind of project, you can do that very easily. I should also mention that a number of our users like to use this tool to generate the very simple SQLs, so that they can then dress them up and make them into either more complex SQLs or even seriously complex SQLs, because we are able to kind of create the basics through the wizard, and we are then users are able to move forward with that. So just to show you how the wizard works, you just pair up your tables, and it's sort of a drag and drop, or you can do them in bulk. You can use the arrows to move in or out, and once you're ready to go, you just give your set of information a name, and QuerySurge will generate the tests for you. So we generated some count star tests. In addition to that, QuerySurge will generate suites for you, so you're all set up to run. So you're really all in hand in terms of getting off the ground quickly for very basic data migration types of testing.
Alrighty, thanks, Jeff. The next question is, so to test Hadoop data, you write the SQL yourself, and it sends it, and QuerySurge sends it to Hadoop?
That's correct. The Hive layer of the Hadoop ecosystem allows you to send Hive QL, Hive query language, which is very much like SQL, to your Hadoop cluster and get answers back as result sets. One of the things that supports that whole environment is a JDBC driver, a Hive JDBC driver. There's also a Hive ODBC driver, and so you can use those through QuerySurge to connect, send off your query, and get your result sets back. Pretty much anyone who has any kind of familiarity with SQL is going to find a very recognizable situation with the Hive query language. There are really very strong parallels between the two, and that was the idea, the whole idea, a major idea of Hive, and so the SQL writing world really has an easy entry into working with Hadoop from the Hive query language.
All right, the next question is, can we schedule dependency between suites inside a scenario? For example, when the first completes the next run.
Yeah, that actually can be done from our, and let me see if I can show this to you. That can be done from our execution API. And I'm going to bring up and share just a little script here that I hope everybody can see at this point. And this is just a little batch file. But the thing I want to kind of highlight for you here is that you can write in either a Windows batch file or on Linux you can write a script to call into the API. And what you can do are things like launch executions. So you can say, for example, run a test suite by name. But the other thing you can do is you can get outcome information. And you can write complex scripts, in fact, as some of our users do, and say, well, if this test failed, then I want you to run that test. But if it passed, I want you to run a different test. You can actually embed logic in your scripting around the QuerySurge API to get all kinds of complex behaviors out of QuerySurge. So a lot of flexibility and creativity in what you can do with the execution API.
Okay. The next question is, where is all error data stored? For example, if I have a huge amount of data in Hadoop and do a test and it gives a very large number of rows as errors, where are those rows stored for the GUI to show them?
So as was previously mentioned in the introduction, QuerySurge has a backend database all of the data that is tested in QuerySurge does end up in the back-end database. Again, the purpose of that is so that you can do historical views of your data. So if you want to go look at old runs, this is obviously a demo system, so we don't have anything that's too terribly old here, but if you want to go see data that is either months or longer old, you can go back and eyeball that data compared to what you've got right now. As I'm sure you imagine, that means if we bring all the data back, that means eventually we're going to have to do some disk management, some data management, and we do give you the tools in our administrative view to do all the management that you need to do with your database. So if you need to remove data from the system because you're getting too big a load in the QuerySurge database, you can do that. If you need to archive it, you can do that, and so on and so forth.
Okay. The next question is, how does the license work? Do we have to take a license for Hadoop or QuerySurge?
Well, QuerySurge is not open source. It is a commercial product, so you need to get licensing to use it. We do have free download trials available for 2 weeks, so you can go to our website and play with QuerySurge if you want to get a little experience with it to see how it works. In addition to that, all of our pricing is on the website, so if you go and check that out, you'll be able to see exactly what the options are for purchasing QuerySurge.
Okay, and we got a couple of questions like this involving discussing software and hardware requirements to load QuerySurge into test tenants.
Those are great questions, and let me just start out by saying that QuerySurge itself, that is QuerySurge software, doesn't really create any restrictions on the amount of data that you can handle. It's available for all comers. The thing that does create the restrictions on the amount of data that QuerySurge can handle is the hardware that you deploy it on. So if you deploy QuerySurge on particularly beefy hardware, then you'll be able to do more than if you deploy it on hardware that doesn't have so much in terms of resources. So really figuring out what kind of testing that you want to do and sizing the hardware appropriately is an important ingredient in being successful with QuerySurge. The other thing that's worthwhile to mention is that a lot of organizations start out maybe keeping a smaller hardware footprint initially for QuerySurge and then build out as they get more experience and start to push more data through from the testing perspective. So hardware does play a very important role, and what you'll need in terms of hardware really is something that you'll have to spec out as you start working with QuerySurge. The last point I'd like to make about hardware sizing is that it is all very, very much dependent on how you use QuerySurge, meaning the testing style that you implement with. So folks who like to write smaller number of queries that bring back larger numbers of rows are going to need a different hardware footprint than folks that like to write larger numbers of queries that bring back smaller numbers of rows.
Okay. The next question is, Hadoop having big data, may it be volumes of pictures and videos too. How does QuerySurge validate the pictures and videos?
If QuerySurge handles most kinds of data that are commonly stored in these kinds of systems, whether database or Hadoop or other sorts of systems. And so they'll come back, images will come back as binary objects, will be evaluated compared to their test comparison binary object that's in a data warehouse, let's say, for example. So if your images are in your Hadoop cluster and you pulled some of them over into your data warehouse architecture, just as to be consistent with the use case that we've been talking about today, QuerySurge would be able to get both of those objects back, compare them, and alert you if they're different.
Okay. The next question is, can different users work on the same test? Collaboration-wise. QuerySurge is really built with collaboration in mind. It's a Web 2.0 UI, so really from a user's perspective, all you really need is a browser to log into QuerySurge. And the basic idea from our perspective is that people get to see all of the data, all of the tests, and
really get to share and work their project and get to a successful endpoint with that through cross collaboration. So our philosophy about that is that more people can see, the better, and the more collaboration we support, the better.
Okay, the next question is how to ignore mismatches if it is a false positive.
Right now, the way QuerySurge is built is we wanted to give maximum flexibility to testers. That's why we emphasize the language aspect of this. So the default mode that QuerySurge works in is if two pieces of data that you have asked it to compare are mismatching, they will QuerySurge will fail that, will flag that and mismatch. Now, having said that, one of your options is to style your SQL so that it knows whether there's supposed to be a match or a mismatch. And there are many cases in which you can do that. So that's one option. The next thing that I'll say is that being alert to this need within the big data world, we are moving in the direction, and it is on our roadmap, of including features that allow you to modulate how QuerySurge responds to data mismatches. So you'll have some, in the upcoming releases, you'll have some options about what QuerySurge actually does in response to a data mismatch.
Okay, and I know it's coming up on time, so I'll pick two more questions, and if there are any questions that we don't get to, we'll have an answer to you as soon as possible after the webinar. We'll send you an answer via email. So the next question is it going to be possible to compare/test 3 or more queries at the same time? For example, not only source and target, but source, target 1, target 2.
Where that question comes up most frequently is where people have, for example, tables in diverse databases that they want to join across, and let that be, for example, their source or their target. And QuerySurge itself does not achieve cross-database joins. What it does, so-called heterogeneous connectivity, what it does allow you to do, though, since it's using standard technologies, is it allows you to set up the connectivity in your environment. And all of the standard database vendors have this kind of feature available, so that you can open up a link between your databases so that then you can issue a query that joins across tables in those diverse databases. And that is a technology that is highly likely to be in the databases that you're using. This needs to be set up. If it's there, then you can take advantage of it with your querying in QuerySurge.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And the last question is, how do you configure connections of the databases for source to target?
Great question. I'll just take a quick moment and go into our administrative area. And what you do is you use the QuerySurge connection wizard, and you can choose the kind of technology that you're going to use. I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, use SQL Server here. We tell you, we'll give you your options. So in this case, you could either set this up for database authentication or Windows authentication, since we're talking about SQL Server. In addition to that, we give you all the information you'll need to gather in order to set up your connection. Once you've got that information, you can fill it out. And pretty much once that's in place, you're good to go. In tandem with this, of course, one step is, and we do review this in the wizard, one step that you need to attend to is making sure that QuerySurge has drivers to your database. Once you make sure that those items are deployed, you're good to go. So it's a pretty straightforward process that we are working hard to make even easier anytime we can. And you can set up a connection to any kind of the databases that you've got out there that are JDBC compliant through QuerySurge and do your testing that way. And the final thing that I should mention in that regard is that one of your options, of course, if you don't have a JDBC driver, is and you only have an ODBC driver, is to use JDBC ODBC Bridge. That's part of the package. So you really can hit any kind of technology that you want to through QuerySurge with any kind of driver, and you're good to go.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's session. I wanted to thank everybody for attending and for their time. I know we ran a couple minutes over, but you guys were great with participating. We still do have a bunch of questions left to answer, so we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Please look out for a follow-up email from me. I'll be sending you the recording and the link to the slide presentation. And other than that, thanks.